Welcome to One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers, where we get curious about what makes us tick. We're here today with a man who has mastered the business side of his passion. Welcome, Jeremy Aston Phillips.
Thanks, Ian. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, so thank you for taking the time to come on the podcast. I know we have spoken in depth at many occasions, but it's great that you're actually on the podcast with us, so that's great. Kick us off then. What do you do?
So work-wise, I am running a business called LM Performance with former British touring car champion Rob Gravett. And we are selling a range of liquor moly products, oils, additives, but mainly focusing on the motorsport, tuning, classic car sectors, rather than just going down the regular garage route. Yeah, it's great. I'm loving every minute of it.
Now, I know that actually behind that description you've given there, there's a little bit more of a driver, isn't it? Because it's less about the product and more about giving back to the industry.
Absolutely. Yes. So when we set the business up, we looked at things slightly differently to the way that you would set up a traditional business. Because what we wanted to do was give back to motorsport. Rob's line has always been, motorsport's been very good to me over the years, and now he wanted an opportunity to give back. So we've been working with some young drivers, some very young kart racers, and trying to give them a little bit more coaching, I guess you call it. Not about the products, not about how to drive the car, but all the other things that you can expect if you're a successful racing driver.
And they're the things, I mean, just while we're there, to get into motorsport is hellishly difficult, isn't it? Because of all the other stuff that you've got to do other than get behind the wheel of a car.
It's incredibly difficult and incredibly expensive. It's been really interesting this year talking to the mums and dads of these 8-year-old racers who they desperately want to succeed, and mum and dad are making huge sacrifices to make that happen. Yes, it is very difficult to get into. It's difficult to at any sort of entry level. I'm a great fan of real grassroots motorsport, auto tests and hill climbs and things like that, which you can do in a road car. You don't have to build a special race car.
Yeah.
But even that, it is expensive.
Yeah.
So yes, it's not an easy sport to get into, and it's not an easy sport to do well in, because it's incredibly dangerous at the same time.
But there's some passion, isn't there? I mean, I know we were at an event earlier on in the year with some of those LM Performance drivers.
Yes.
I mean, a whole wide range there, but one that really stuck in my mind. Do you remember? It's Catherine Potter.
Yes.
Talk about wanting to do it and setting up her own business at the age of
absolutely
14.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I started talking to Catherine would be a couple of years ago now, because I'd seen one of her posts and what she was doing and how she was making things to support her racing, because she knew how expensive it was, and mum and dad aren't, they're not sort of landed gentry or anything like that. And she wanted to contribute to what she was doing, and I just thought, this is amazing. This is proper entrepreneurial spirit, which I'm a great fan of, particularly in kids. And I think that it's something that in schools, the value of money isn't really taught. She's got it. She understands that this is really expensive. If I can sell this for this amount of money, it'll help pay towards a new tyre or 2 new tyres or some fuel or all of these things that go with it.
And she makes some great stuff out of vehicle tyres. Yeah.
And she makes clocks out of tyres. She makes things out of old chains and pistons, and she can weld really well. And I just think it's fantastic.
Yeah. So I mean, please go check out Catherine Potter on Instagram. It's
absolutely
certainly there is someone who's, and I think that's the thing that I see. When we first met, and with Rob as well, this passion about wanting to give back and see people come up through the ranks.
I always say you can't teach passion and you can't teach enthusiasm, and you can't learn passion and you can't learn enthusiasm. And I've been very fortunate to meet various people in my life who are just overflowing with passion or enthusiasm about different things. But that's the difference. That's what is your USP? Well, we've got a bunch of people who are out and out petrol heads, but not just the love of cars, but the love of helping people succeed. I always talk about, people say, are you in sales? And I said, well, not really sales, business development, in so much as I want to help my customers' businesses develop.
Yeah.
How can I help you develop your business?
Yeah.
What can we do to help you develop your business? And it's been a sort of mantra throughout my career, which has been quite varied, where I learned quite early on that everyone's a salesperson. Everyone is. Doesn't matter what you do, you are selling a service, yourself, a product, whatever, but that's what it is. But how can you do it slightly differently? How can you go in and, when I worked in the clothing industry, I never took any samples with me because everybody knew that we sold clothes.
Right.
And I wanted to find out what we could do slightly differently as a business. And we developed a whole load of tools to help customers sell more product. Right. And by virtue of them selling more product, they were buying 90% from us. So they sold more product of our range and we grew the business.
Yeah.
But I'm passionate about people like you are. I really enjoy spending time with people, finding out what their goal is, where do they want to get to with their business or themselves, and how can we help make that happen. And with the LM Performance work, there's a degree of what we can do with that. There's we set up the DRS program, driver and racer support program, which is year one been great. We've had some fantastic individuals. We did that workshop that you talked about. And we're going to develop that next year a lot more, because we've learnt racing drivers struggle to sell product for you, but you're plugging into that enthusiasm, you're plugging into that drive, that determination. And apart from sitting down and teaching them how to physically drive the car, there's a whole load of other stuff that they need to understand, learn, be familiar with, the media side, the stuff that you've done with them with Thinking It Better and mindset training and all of these other things that, motor racing's difficult, but there's a whole load of stuff that goes with it that people don't often consider.
It's interesting that the way you described it about, that we're all salespeople and it's we're in the business of people. It's interesting. I always find it interesting when we have different people as guests on here. Even a person who was into a career in HR, and we all have sort of preconceptions about what that might mean. But that conversation centered around, it was about people, beliefs, values, culture. And here we are. We're talking about lubricants and oil products, but at the center of it is people again. It's
absolutely
about something.
Yeah.
So what would be really interesting is try and navigate the path. How did you end up doing this? Because what a great job, what a great role. But how did you get there? I mean, you've mentioned clothing industry.
Yeah.
What take us back.
Right. So yes. Well, I left school. I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. My passion for cars and motorsport and things like that came out of my secondary school.
Okay.
My best friend, great guy, and I basically did very little work and learned lots about motor racing and things like that.
What was the spark? What?
Oh, what was the spark? I don't know. I've always been fascinated. I was very good at taking things apart when I was a little boy and not very good at putting them back together again. And I was fascinated with Lego, and early technical Lego came out in the 80s, and loved all of that. The fascination, I think, was the external bit, watching cars, the sounds, there's something, it's difficult to describe. If you're blessed with being a petrolhead or cursed with being a petrolhead, it's very difficult to describe. I mean, when I hear a V12 Lamborghini engine fire ups, I get a funny feeling in my tummy. I get I think my heart rate goes up. I think that there's, that lots of things go on around that. And my chum Henry, his dad, raced in classics, and we'd go and watch that, and we'd go and watch touring cars. Well, we wouldn't go and watch the touring cars. We'd go on a Friday, because it was just, you'd have to queue for about 3 or 4 hours to get in back then. So yes, I've got lots of photographs of, me at Silverstone and Donington and places like that. And it was, passion, real passion. But when I left school, I couldn't see how I could turn that passion into something work-wise. Yeah. So I went down the route of, I have absolutely no idea what to do. And friends of my parents suggested I went into retail, which I did for a bit, and I hated it. Absolutely. And that's proper people business. But
how long was a little bit?
I think I was in retail for just under 2 years.
Right.
I did a management training course with John Lewis, and worked in Brent Cross Shopping Centre for a bit, and then moved down to Bristol and worked down in what was the John Lewis in the centre of Bristol before it shut down and moved out to Cribs. And it just really wasn't me. And it was actually whilst I was at John Lewis, I spoke to a family friend, and I said, I really want to get into cars. What can I do? And he said, well, I've got a friend who runs a business up at Silverstone. I'll put you in touch with him. So drove up to Silverstone, all suited and booted, proper public school boy turning up there, and everyone's covered in muck and overalls and this. I think this is fantastic. And I worked, for a chap called Spike Anderson, Samurai Conversions, building 240Z Datsuns.
Right.
And I just loved it. I was first there in the morning. I was last to leave at night. British Grand Prix weekend, I slept in the workshops because our security was a bit ropey. So
that's amazing.
Yes. So it was great. And the guy who did the engine building there was ex-Tickford's, and was just, everything was so precise. And that was when I learned an awful lot about what you can do to a standard engine to make it go faster. And I found that fascinating. That's where the sort of spark was ignited. And the problem was that was sort of first recession, and I was the last one in, so I was the first one out. So I went off to college. I thought, well, let's get a piece of paper around this. And I was horrified when I got to college, because we were taught how to bodge things.
Right.
And it's like, I can't remember. We had custom pistons made for us, and you could just hold the piston in your hand, and as it warmed up, the gudgeon pin slipped out. When I was at college, we were told to take a hammer and drift to the gudgeon pin and beat 7 bells out of it to get it out. You can't do that. And there was a press in the back of the workshops, but we weren't encouraged to use that. And it was fun. It was a motor vehicle course that was designed to produce mechanics who would end up predominantly working in tyre shops and things like that. Some people left the course and went and worked for main dealers, but a lot of the guys that I've got, 2 girls that were on the course, ended up basically, as just jobbing mechanics.
Right.
So did that, and then ended up working with a guy in Wiltshire looking after BMWs, Mercedes, German cars, servicing them, changing brakes, doing all basic mechanical work on them. And it was great fun. I just absolutely loved it. But I had to go off and actually earn some proper money, because it wasn't paying very much. No. And so with various different jobs, doing various different things, I worked in tyre repair for a bit, which was fascinating, particularly sort of the earth mover stuff. And
big stuff.
Big stuff, yeah. We did everything from mopeds to earth movers, but we didn't repair the tyres ourselves. We supplied everything that you needed to repair tyres.
And all this is all, you've got the passion over there, and what you're trying to do is desperately trying to edge towards it.
Yeah. I actually worked for the guy, one of the early guys that brought liquid moly products into the UK, and that sort of didn't work because he was massively underfunded and couldn't do what he wanted to do. But Yeah, so tire repair, that was again fascinating, because it was engineering. It was, this is all just gets me going. I love it.
Yeah.
And then did quite a long stint in the clothing industry. The
Right.
guy who ran the business recruited out of or outside the traditional clothing industry because he wanted fresh ideas.
Yeah.
And I was with them for, gosh, 10, 11, 12 years.
Right. And what kind of
So when I
what were you
joined
doing
the
there?
business, it was about 7 million turnover, predominantly polo shirts, sweatshirts, t-shirts, going into the embroiderers, screen printers, people like that. A lot of junior size polo shirts were going into schools, but we weren't really classed as a school uniform provider. And then we started to develop that, and we bought a company up in Nottingham, and then became a proper schoolwear supplier. But as with a lot of businesses, it was a logistics company.
Yeah.
And yes, we sold school uniform, and we sold polo shirts, t-shirts, sweatshirts into the embroidery sector, and we did workwear and things like that. But there's no point trying to do anything like that if you can't get the product into your customer.
Yeah.
And because we'd come out of the sort of printwear, workwear sector, our mentality was very different to the traditional, well, what was the traditional schoolwear sector. We aimed to get every order picked and packed and dispatched on a next day delivery. Whereas the schoolwear sector, they did a lot of forward selling, they did a lot of forward buying, and then they would go into pre-back to school. So we had to learn an awful lot. And the industry turned around and said, oh, you can't do that, you can't do this. We'll show you. And we did. And the business model worked very well. It was a lot of hard work. But we took, in a 10-year period, we took the business from 7 to 30 million. And at peak, we were shipping 22,000 units, individual units a day on a next day delivery.
So what were you learning about yourself as you were going through? So you've got this motorsport passion, but you must have been learning all sorts of things that you enjoyed, that you were good at. I mean, you mentioned about sort of the people side when we
The thing I loved more than anything else was going into a business, and you had these enthusiastic business owners going, we want to grow this business, we want to do this, we want to do that. When we went into the schoolwear sector, it was a bit of a closed sort of club almost, and we opened it up. And we brought the price of blazers down. We were, the word disruptive wasn't being used back then, but we were very disruptive, and we liked to do things differently to everybody else. But no, the thing that the real passion I used to have was sitting down. We had a customer up here. I remember sitting down with them, and it's like, this is where we want to take the business, but we can't, because we can't buy blazers and we can't buy school trousers, and we want to do this, that, and the other. And it's like, right, okay. We know lots of people like that. So the traditional oak panelled schoolwear specialists, plenty of them out there still do a fantastic job. But they got a bit of a wake-up call because the embroiderer down the road was able to buy the products that they could buy, and suddenly they're competing against each other. And I can remember one of these oak panelled, they're no longer in business, but they rang me up and said, you can't supply these people. I said, why not? Well, because they're not a schoolwear specialist. And I said, no, but they want to be. We're the schoolwear specialist. And I said, yeah, but welcome to the world of business and competition and everything like that.
So was this something that was emerging, this ability to sort of challenge, swim against the current kind of thing coming out, do you think?
The guy who owned the business that I was working for liked to stir things up. He liked to do things differently, and we had a brilliant management team, and it was fun. It was really fun. It was very exciting. We were very well backed, so if we wanted to do this and do that, and I remember we had a conversation once. So fairy godmother comes down and waves a magic wand. Where would you like to go as far as the business was concerned? And I said, I'd like to buy that business.
Yeah.
And they were the biggest schoolwear company in the country.
Right.
One of the biggest in Europe, probably one of the biggest in the world. And I guess if I had any opportunity, it would be to buy their biggest competitor, but I thought there's no way we'll buy them. We ended up buying them.
Right.
And that really, really shook things up because, we ended up being very much part of the establishment.
Right.
There was a show up in Birmingham, and we went to go and see it, and we were allowed to go in, be walked around, and then walked out. We weren't allowed to attend it. And I remember talking to our commercial director on the way back in the car, and I said, what happens if we buy these guys? Because they've got the biggest stand at the show. He said, yeah, that's going to be interesting. So the next year we turned up and we were like headline sponsors for the show.
I mean, the thing that's going in my mind here, I mean, what a journey that is already, because, you know, you leave school not quite sure what you want to do. You know, you have a little spell in retail, and now suddenly you're working with an organisation that's growing and challenging and disrupting. So that this theme, this people theme it's emerging here, isn't it? Because at that point, your plan, you know, how are we going to do it differently? I want to go and talk to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, nothing's better than sitting down with a customer and asking them honestly what they think of you as a business. We did ISO 9000, and part of that was that we had to go out and ask customers. So we got the one person that we knew would get the best response from any customer to pick up the phone and ring a set number of customers every year, and they would tell us the same thing every year. But that's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to go and see the customers that might be a bit tricky, difficult on the phone, this, that, and the other. And it was really clear. They said, you know, we want to go down this route. We want to develop this range of products. We want to do this. We want you to help us in the same way as there were a number of really large clothing distributors. We want to get the same level of support from you, who are very small, as we do from them. So we developed different ways of helping them. I mean, to put a brochure together, we spent, I don't know, £15,000-20,000 on a brochure every year. There's no way that ABC Embroidery is going to spend £15,000-20,000 on a brochure. So the big distributors did overprints and things like that, and we did the same. And we created a generic website that they could top and tail themselves. It was just a catalogue. So, and this was early 2000s. So the internet was obviously there, but we weren't selling anything. We were taking faxes and telephone calls. And absolutely, yes, yeah. And we had a lot of people processing orders, but the amount of human intervention was massive.
Yeah.
And when I joined them, you know, one of the things that we identified as a management team quite early on was we've got to bring the number of errors down, because we could very easily pick the wrong product and send it to the wrong person.
Yeah. And undo that work you've done by building that relationship. Yeah,
absolutely. But it was embracing technology and looking at how we could use technology to actually develop what we were doing. So we moved to a bespoke IT provider. We developed a warehouse management system with them. We then went online selling, and we went to, I think when I left, we were running at 99.8 accuracy. But there was one stage early on, we had two carriers because we weren't big enough to put everything into one basket. And it was quite chaotic. And we did pick the wrong product and send it to the wrong person.
Do you think, given that it was an unconventional journey up to that point, do you think that gave you the advantage of being to ask or challenge the norms, which maybe hadn't been conditioned into you at that point?
Yeah, I think so. And that was partly the reason why David recruited outside of the industry, because we didn't have any preconceived ideas as to this is the way it's done in this industry.
Yeah.
And I've had a number of conversations recently. This is the way that this is done. This is the way that that's done. And it's that, you know, and there is a lot of conditioning. I'm a great fan of Vishen Lakhiani, and he talks about bullshit rules. Yeah. And we all have them. We all have these sort of rules in our heads that have no substance whatsoever, but that's the way that we've been told. Oh, you know, that's the way it's done.
So that's what we believe.
So that's why that's what we believe. So I like to challenge that. You know, in my early years, I was probably quite rebellious and I would push, and Yes. I did a stint working with a photographer, and brilliant guy. And he would always say, don't just look at something, look at it in a different way. So lie on the ground, go up high, go around the corner, get a complete view of what you're trying to take a photograph of. And we were up at the Co-op headquarters, and they wanted a photograph to go on the front of a thing that they were doing. And I ended up taking this photograph lying on my back, looking up this spiral staircase there, and it just looked bonkers. And they went, oh, we love that. And it is. If you look at life in a slightly different way, it's like, oh, why are we doing it that? Why is everybody doing this? You know, people are quite sheepy. They do follow a trend. You know, what would happen if we did this? And yeah, I guess I do like to push boundaries a bit. I do like to do things a bit differently, and in a controlled way, find out whether something would work or not.
Yeah.
And then go down that route. I have been in situations where it hasn't been a controlled way. And, you know, sometimes you do make mistakes. You have to make mistakes. That's how you learn. Yeah. You know, if you go through life, you'll never learn anything. But going down and trying something, and it might not quite work that way, and then you try it again, it's like, oh yeah, that works. Yeah. And we do that every day with our business. We you know, we're always looking at, you know, how can we do this differently? Is that working? We talk to our customers. I was talking to a customer the other day, and they said, you know, we'd like it if you could do this. And yeah, no, we can do that. It's absolutely no problem at all. You know, tell us, speak to us, talk to us.
This dialogue again, isn't it? This,
you have to have
going to see all of those customers, listening to people.
But I mean, the world of business has changed with the advent of eBay, Amazon Marketplace, things like that, and that customer connection has been lost. And I've never wanted to sort of run a business that's some faceless organization that puts things in boxes and sends them out to people. I like to know who my customers are. I like to be able to talk to my customers, because they're the people that will tell you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. But yes, the world of commerce has changed dramatically. I was thinking about this driving up, that it's so different to how it was. And there are people, you know, today we're competing with organizations that are one guy running out of his garage at home, and he doesn't have any overheads, or she doesn't have any overheads. And it's, you know, different business models and different ways of doing things.
Which kind of brings it almost brings the circle back round again, because what you're really saying here is, you know, your passion, your belief is that if you engage and get that human contact and that level of service there, then that starts to become the differentiator that helps people.
Absolutely. I mean, I had a call on Easter Saturday this year, and this customer had turned up at the race circuit. They live quite a long way from that race circuit, and they didn't have any brake fluid.
Right.
And it's like, is there any way you can help us out? And it's like, yeah, no problem at all. Now, if I couldn't, I would have said I couldn't. I'm a great believer in under-promising and over-delivering, but I was free on Easter Sunday, and I didn't mind driving up to Donington and back.
You get up to Source and Motorsport, right?
Well, yeah. But it was another one of those things that all these little bits that you do to help people, they don't tend to go unnoticed. And I'm not doing this for self-glory. I'm doing it because I think that we've lost a bit of that customer service. I think we've lost the whole sort of personal touch. I think that has been lost.
Well, you've used a word quite a lot, as you've been talking as well, helping. You know, and that strikes me that's kind of at the centre here.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I've found is that if you help someone, you get that nice little warm fuzzy feeling. You can't help everybody, but on the business side and on the personal side, I mean, I do a lot of work with guys that have had issues, and I try and help them. And we work in sort of groups, and there's a lot of good stuff comes out of it. It doesn't cost anything to help people. And if more people helped more people, I think the world would be a slightly different pace. I think that there is more of that. People are less frightened to ask for help than they used to.
Yeah.
But it's finding, it sounds real cliche, but it's finding the right help.
Yes.
So I would never try and help someone do something that I didn't know anything about, but I know plenty of people that would.
Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting. I mean, that theme of help, again, a previous guest on here, the theme of kindness came out as well, and they kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely, yes.
It's having that time.
We do live in a very different world now, with social media, and it's very easy for someone to sit behind a screen and behave completely out of character.
Yes.
And if you met that person in the pub, or you met that person at a business event, they would not behave the way that they do when they're behind the screen.
Yeah.
And there's some really unpleasant behavior that goes on. And yeah, again, being kind to someone, it doesn't cost anything. And actually, if you're kind to someone and you help them, your brain releases dopamine and it makes you feel better. And it's like an inbuilt way of your body giving you a little reward.
A free drug.
But yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
dopamine, a performance enhancing and modifying drug, and we generate it ourselves.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah.
I'm conscious on time, and there's two questions I'd like to still ask you. So
Okay.
I'm going to go. The penultimate one,
Right.
is where next?
Where next? We've got lots of projects in the pipeline. The one thing I love about where I'm now and who I'm working with is that Rob and I have a very similar attitude to many things. We think along very similar lines, but we also think completely differently about certain things. And in the last 18 months or so, we've developed some ideas, we've developed some projects. We launched the DRS program, which was a project that we wanted to launch. And we've got a lot sort of going on in the background. So, yeah, there's an awful lot that I can't talk about at the moment, but there's some really exciting stuff in the pipeline. But with my other hat on, with my Gravit Racing commercial director hat on, we're developing what's going on with Bradley in the car, and what the plans are for next year, the year after that. And I'm also working with other racing drivers where we're trying to put some stuff together as to where do they want to go, which route do they want to take,
help them.
So how can we help them?
Yeah.
And it's not always about financial help. It might be about helping to put together a brochure that they use to raise sponsorship, or how do you go down that route of finding sponsorship, and how do you look after sponsors and everything like that. So yeah, there's an awful lot in the pipeline. Some of it will stick, some of it won't stick. I'm one of these people that likes to have a number of little things bubbling away, because it keeps the old grey matter going. So it's important.
So watch this space, but the theme is definitely going to be, it's going to have something to do with people helping and motorsport.
Yeah, it'll be people predominantly. That's what makes the world go round. But it will be engineering, motorsport, making things go faster, doing some silly things, and having some fun.
Oh,
That is the most important thing. Yeah, we actually, when we put LMP together, we wrote a sort of charter, and the bottom line of it is have fun at all times. When we stop having fun, we question where we are.
I love that.
Because
Yeah.
we spend most of our life working, and and it's been a bumpy ride over the last few months. It's not, business is not easy, but if you're having fun, it makes it so much easier.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, and that plays out even where an environment is hard and challenging. You can still find ways to make it.
Yeah,
when you're working with people.
Absolutely. Yeah, and doing something you love.
Yeah.
I was down. We had a meeting last week, and I was talking to a guy who I've known for many years, who's involved in motor racing, and we both said, we wake up in the morning and we're doing what we love.
Yeah.
Every day's a Sunday. It's wonderful. It doesn't mean that every day is going to be trouble free and it's going to be a walk in the park. Every day has its challenges, but predominantly if you're doing what you love in an environment that you love, that makes it so much easier. Really does.
Fantastic. So my last question.
Yes.
Let's imagine that we have conquered time travel. Same question to every guest. You can travel back in time and leave yourself, the younger Jeremy, a note that you can write to yourself, knowing what you know now. What would you write to the younger Jeremy?
Never give up. Never, ever, ever give up. I think I was probably guilty of that for a while and went through a very challenging period of time in my life. And I came out of it and I'm a completely different person since that. But yeah, you've just got to keep moving forwards. You've got to, there will be bumps in the road. There will be some big bumps in the road and there might be some huge canyons in the road. But if you just keep moving forwards and find out what you love doing and follow your heart. If you can earn some money in the process, fabulous. But yeah, if you can do what you love. My dear friend Henry, that got me sort of, all fired up about motor racing and cars and everything like that. He said to me, find what you love. If you do what you love for a living, you'll love what you do for a living. And, and he was, until he tragically got killed, he was doing what he loved. And that was the reason why I went back into automotive. That's why I got back into engineering, because I enjoyed what I was doing. I wasn't passionate about it. It didn't get out of bed and go, yeah, no, fantastic. Selling school uniform doesn't mean that you end up at a motor racing circuit with a 1980s Group C Porsche next door to you. That never happened.
Jeremy, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Well, thank you, Ian. It's been we've been talking about this for a long time, but we've done it.
We've done it. You have been listening to One Thought at a Time. If you have enjoyed today's episode, then please like and subscribe, and do investigate our other episodes on our YouTube, Spotify, and Apple channels. If you'd like to reach out to us on anything we've mentioned today or in our other episodes, you can find us on Instagram, on LinkedIn and on TikTok, either at Ian M. Travers or at ThinkingitBetter. And if you'd like to reach out to Jeremy today on anything that we've been talking about, then again, we will provide Jeremy's contact details in the comments section. Thank you very much for listening.